What do you envy most about the opposite gender? The ability to piss and stand. Have you seen what a women's toilet looks like at a bar? You would never touch us again lol. I went hiking with a friend once. He needed to pee and I was glad to get to rest for a while, take in the scenery and have a bite. All he did was go a bit off the trail, find a tree and returned within 2 minutes. When it was my turn to go to pee, I had to go behind a bush. When I returned, I found he had sat down and was halfway through his sandwich. I have never irrationally hated someone so much in my entire life. Main 1. Ability to have biological kids later in life. Medicine has improved and all, but having to plan a kid based on a biological clock rather than when it makes the most sense in my life journey sucks. Secondary. Pee standing up and without unclothing. That's unique to my outdoor pursuits. I know there are female urination devices, but it's extra weight plus weight of cleaning supplies, water. Having to pee when doing winter backpacking or when you are in a harness with multiple clothing layers is erg. I end up not hydrating enough to avoid it, which isn't good at all. I've done a lot of outdoor stuff and lots of climbing. I'm impressed with the girls I've met on big wall climbs on El Capitan. The logistics of all that must be tricky. Their ability to have kids without destroy their body and missing several months in career. Do you want to have a baby? Yes. But you don't want to give birth? Yes. At the same time, do you want your child to be your own? Yes. So you want to be a father? Not having to choose between periods or birth controls that changes so much, even our sense of smell changes. WTF, that sounds terrible. Why does it change the sense of smell? Does it change other senses, too? Being able to play a more passive role in dating and not having to make the first approach. I have next to no dating experience since I have social anxiety and find it really hard to initiate conversations with people in general, let alone someone I'm attracted to. As a result, I'm quite lonely, trying to work on it though. 120% this. I've always thought that if I were just as attractive, or even less, but the opposite gender, I'd never have any problems dating. Not only that, but I could be as choosy as I wanted. But unfortunately I'm a socially anxious guy with zero confidence, so I've never dated or have had any other experience. This will sound twisted, but when they are the targets of domestic abuse or sexual violence, people react with anger on their behalf for the most part. When it happened to me, people either mocked me, didn't believe it happened, or decided I deserved it somehow. I was 10. What 10-year-old boy, who still thinks girls are gross, is going to want to have sexual interactions with a teacher older than their mom? I never laid a hand on my ex, but she accused me of hitting her, as revenge for breaking things off after she cheated, and I had to sit in jail until I could see a judge. I lost my job, my apartment, and a ton of friends and family who either sided with her by default, or knew I didn't do it, but didn't want to be pulled into the drama and associated with a domestic abuser. And when she admitted, in court, to the judge, she only accused me out of spite. The judge just dropped the charges against me, didn't order them cleared from my record, and didn't charge her with any crimes. If I had been born with a vagina instead of a penis, my teacher would have rotted in prison, and my ex would be in prison for filing a false police report, if not in prison for actual abuse, assuming she would be a he in this scenario. I have penis envy. I love everything about a penis. If I had one, I'd probably never stop playing with it. You'd get bored quite quickly. That is until you've reloaded. I'm jealous that men don't have periods. You're so lucky. It is so painful. Not for all women though. I'm constantly glad mine aren't particularly painful. One of my friends once described hers as being slashed at with a hot knife. Being able to talk about mental health or abuse without either being laughed at or not being taken seriously. I know it's not the case with everyone. I talk to my girlfriend about it, but I can't with other people in my life. I don't want to in fear of being called weak. That's a double-edged sword though. Yes, my doctor took my mental health issues seriously. However, any physical problems I have are somehow nullified or taken less seriously because I'm prone to anxiety and depression, so everything somehow leads back to, should we review your medication? Neither a bleeding ovarian cyst, nor cholecystitis were psychological in origin, but I needed to see a doctor who didn't know me to get diagnosed and operated on. Not having to drop true to take a leak, especially in public restrooms, outdoors, seems A, much more convenient, B, more sanitary, and C, much less cold. TBF to you. I do completely drop true in any bathroom or urinal. Bare ass on full glory. Acidine dominance, but I appreciate the annoyance on your part. The ability to get a proper diagnosis. Most of the criteria for mental health problems and developmental disorders are heavily based on how most males show symptoms. I was denied autism and depression diagnosis by doctors because I did too well, even after expressing some really fucked up thought I've been having. I've been saving up money for private healthcare for months, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Stuff like general health too. My period that caused me to pass out and wake up in a pool of my own vomit and blood. I injured my head during the fall. Was apparently not concerning enough, and I was just being overdramatic, because the gynecologist I went to was also on her period and she was coping just fine. Your healthcare providers suck. I hope you find a better one that better suits your needs ASAP. Men's reproductive organs don't create chronic pain as a byproduct of them functioning normally. Must be nice. And frankly, all of the other hassle that goes with it, too. I've had chronic vestibule pain, pelvic pain, since I was a teenager. I'm now 26 and I'm so fucking over it. Having better access to support. Less of a stigma around asking for help from others. That they don't have periods and can't become pregnant after sex. I know. Some people will say it's blessing and I should be proud that my body can make another human, but no. That's not how I see it, and don't get me wrong. Yeah, it really is cool if I think about it, but I don't want that. It may or may not be a blessing depending on the person, but either way it's a life-altering experience and can be life-threatening if something goes wrong. I've had 2 kids and both relatively positive experiences, but I wouldn't mind if my husband could take the burden of pregnancy and childbirth for once. The ability to take your own kid to the playground without being stared at, condescending to, or ostracized. It's either, look at Mr. Mom, babysitting today, or stared at like I'm a creeper, and having people keep an eye on me the entire time I'm there. I have 2 young kids and I have heard this repeatedly from guys. This never happens to me. I don't know why. Women come over and start talking to me if they are not on their phones while their kids play. Peeing standing up, therefore not having to do the hover in public restrooms. Yeah, true, but when taking a shit we have to make sure our genitals aren't dipping into the toilet water walls, which is equally as bad. Emo. Being assertive or proud doesn't immediately make people, often of both sexes, liken you to a hormonal dog. Hormonal dog equals bitch and heat. Walking alone and not fearing for your life. I love walking and running and love doing it when it's peaceful, which is usually nights or early morning, and both are equally awful options for safety. In the same vein, I'd add solo travel to certain countries without fear of being attacked, raped. I've done a fair bit of solo travel, but there are so many places I'd love to visit but just won't for fear of being physically, sexually assaulted. I know men can be too, but generally speaking, they're far more likely able to travel through places alone without the dangers of being a solo female traveler. Going through the world and not being looked at with suspicion by default by everyone else, even those of your own gender. I was going to phrase this as getting the benefit of doubt. Exemption from the draft, even though it's not active here and I age out of it this year anyway. Other than that I don't really know. Based on what my sister and my female friends tell me, it sounds like women have to put up with a lot of bullshit that I don't as a man. I have a lot of female friends, and they are incredibly resilient, both physically and emotionally. I really admire that. Honestly, we just don't really have a choice. I envy the way most men move and exist in the world. My husband has always belonged to himself. I've never lived a conscious day like that. A lot of it is fake it till you make it. Women's bodies can be so much more beautiful than men's bodies. Sure, it takes work to look good, but that's universal across the genders. All things being equal, women are so beautiful. Women's bodies can be so much more beautiful than men's bodies. I think you're just heterosexual, dude. Women seem to have a lot more options for clothing. I can't always find the colors or styles I want. Counterpoint. You guys have functional pockets. I absolutely hate periods so much they made me absolutely miserable. There's nothing fun about it. I don't understand people who call it a gift of womanhood or whatever, it's stupid. Not to mention people who don't identify as women have periods too, which makes that statement even worse. I state the obvious, I'm 100% sure it's already been said. But no periods, hormone swings, PMS, shit like that. The things I would do to no longer have a menstrual cycle without fucking with my body in irreversible ways. I have endometriosis and PCOS, and once a month I'm literally in debilitating pain, but I'm expected to work and act completely normal for. It's fucking ridiculous. On top of that, I fucking hate having to buy period products. I have to spend a few $1,000s a year just because my body does something that the other 50% of the population doesn't do. Why? How the fuck is that fair? On top of that, if I do anything to ease my menstrual cycle such as birth control, I have to deal with my hormones being whacked out. Remember to take a pill every day, lowered libido, weight gain, more depression, anxiety and suicidal thoughts than I normally have. Shit's fucking dumb. I'm also very envious of the fact that men can walk around at night without worrying of being raped or murdered. And yes, I'm well aware men still get raped or murdered, but in comparison to women they hardly do, which is why they don't worry about shit like that. I'm also pissed men are allowed pockets.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe and watch our other videos.